Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Blue Staple podcast. I'm yours truly, Marcus. Thank you guys for tuning in. Another beautiful week. We got another week of football coming up for the Indianapolis Colts. Appreciate you guys for tuning in once again on all platforms. If you're not following us, just look up the Blue Staple podcast. We're located everywhere. So this week, the Indianapolis Colts are heading back home. They're going to be taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. This should be an interesting matchup. Of course, the Las Vegas Raiders are on the losing side of things, of course, trying to figure out their mode, which mode they want to lock in on, figure out their motives in general. With behind Ashton Genty and Geno Smith, Pete Carroll as their head coach, this should be an interesting matchup for the Indianapolis Colts. Las Vegas Raiders are coming down to Indy, going to be heading to Lucas Oil Stadium. The Colts are heading back home this week. They're going to be at home facing the Las Vegas Raiders. The Indianapolis Colts just bounced off of a loss of last week against the Rams, which was a very good game towards the end, besides that whole 88-yard touchdown by Tutu Atwell from Matthew Stafford. This team is looking to get back on the winning side of things, going up against this Raiders team who's pretty much young. Ashton Genty, their star running back. Geno Smith, still trying to figure it out with that offense. All it does is take time. They're still trying to figure out which direction they want to go. But having Geno Smith as their quarterback as of right now, after coming off the last year, it's not a bad start. So we're going to see what type of energy they're going to bring into Lucas Oil Stadium. But this game's going to have a lot going on. Before the game, of course, Shaquille Leonard announced his retirement just last week. He was definitely a stud in his prime, one of the best linebackers in the healthy state. When he was healthy, he was definitely one of the best linebackers, top two. Some claimed him as the best. Between him and Fred Warner, it was always going back and forth. But congratulations to announced the retirement to Shaquille Leonard. Wish him the best endeavors post football. I know he's been in the coaching schemes. It looked like high school football back at home. So it's good to see that he's still around the game that he loved. Definitely was one of my favorite players. I still got his jersey in my closet. One of my favorite players when he was on the field. Can never forget that Tampa Bay game. He just had a breakout moment, but always was good at tackling and finding the football. True ball hawk when he was out there on the field, man. Definitely. And another announcement that shocked a lot of people was Xavien Howard announced his retirement before this week. Now, earlier this week, he was on the injury report for personal reasons. And me, personally, I thought, it had to be something. Didn't know what it was because they wouldn't explain it. But maybe that was like Tuesday. And then Wednesday, the announcement came out that he announced his retirement. It shocked me because I was like, what? So it's like, where does that leave the Colts in this situation? Of course, a lot of fans before the situation kind of wanted to be done with Xavien Howard anyway. Me personally, Xavien Howard in his prime was one of the best corners in the league. In Miami, he had a nice little run. The one-hand snag interception, a lot of people remember, especially me personally, the one-hand interception was just one of the greatest plays he had in his career. One of the plays that stood out for me was that one-hand grab. If you just look up Xavien Howard, one-hand interception, it'll pop up. But he was one of my favorites in his prime. He was a pretty good guy. So when we got him out of free agency, I was like, okay, he can make some noise. But it didn't go as planned. Of course, him battling injuries throughout his career, then him getting up there in age, just filling in the piece that needed to be filled in when he got to Indianapolis, just didn't work out as planned. And he wound up announcing retirement. But that does leave a spot open for the Colts. They see what they're going to do here, of course. With all the injuries going on with Indianapolis right now, it's been pretty insane. They got a big list. A lot of people that are looking to come back here. So it's going to be interesting. I know Jonathan Edwards had himself a pretty good game last week, definitely in preseason as well. So turned a few heads. Hopefully next week, this weekend, I would say, he's going to be probably getting the call to get some more snaps in. They brought some guys in from the practice squad and some visits this week. So we'll see what they're going to do with that situation at the cornerback room. But like I said, Xavien Howard just announced retirement, so that does leave his position available. I know a lot of people with the Xavien Howard, in his brief moments here in Indianapolis, that were talking about the whole Juju Brent situation. Was like, nothing can be worse than Juju Brent. Of course he was injury prone and things like that. Calling Xavien Howard, it was like, Juju was still on the roster. He could have had his moment right there. But it is what it is. That's the situation with the Colts. Especially being with a guy like Lou Anarumo. Lou Anarumo loved vets. So he's going to rely on vets regardless of the situation. So I don't know if Juju was going to be available to take that spot anyway. But it is what it is at the end of the day. Looks like Jonathan Edwards might be getting that call to take that spot. It's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do against this Raiders team. This Raiders team is no joke. Despite the record of what they have, Ashton Genty has looked like he turned the clock back to, his running back ways in college. So he changed his stance back to normal. It's going to be interesting to see what type of energy they're going to bring into Lucas Oil Stadium this week. It's going to be interesting for sure. But like I said, the crowd's going to be roaring. I know Shaq's going to be in there. So it's going to be, the energy is going to be high, especially after last week against the Rams. It didn't end the way it wanted it to end. I know they're probably going to be on 10 this weekend. So they're going to have to bring the energy this week if they want to get back on the winning ways of football. But this offense for the Las Vegas Raiders, with Pete Carroll at the coach, they got Chip Kelly as a coordinator. It's going to be interesting to see. I know they're probably more run heavy than pass heavy. But for the offensive side of things for the Raiders, it just hasn't been going their way. They do have a lot of turnovers and things of that nature, but I think their direction this week is probably going to be lean more towards the run game with Genty. He's probably going to be their workhorse this week, if not anything. But the Colts has been pretty solid, stopping the run game. But with injuries and things of that nature, who knows what might happen this week? And I'm pretty sure they're probably going to try to unleash Genty. But like I said, with Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, they've been pretty much locking things up. My concern is going to be that outside help, the edge rush for the run blocking. As of the past few weeks, it's been a little iffy. The interior has never been a question of my brain, to stop the run. But, there's been a few explosive plays. But with this Raiders offense, they do rely on a lot of explosive plays. So it's going to be interesting to see what their direction is going to be going into this week. But like I said, I'm pretty sure with the 12 personnel, they're probably going to rely more on the run than passing, especially through the last 3 weeks of football. There's been a lot of turnovers of the football, so I'm pretty sure they're going to run more than they throw. But it's going to be interesting to see how they match up against this Colts defense. The Colts defense should be unlocked this week, just due to the lack of depth on the offensive line for the Raiders. The Colts defensive line should see some type of success, and this is some success that Colts fans want to see. This defensive line, pass rush wise, has been an understatement this year so far. The Latu just came back last week and had himself a good game. So he should be unlocked this week, especially with the outside protection on the offensive line for the Raiders. Been battling injury, so they're going to have some backups in. This defensive line should see some pressures, and we can create some turnovers for the Colts. The Colts turnovers, but from the first 2 weeks, they have went down. They haven't been committing a lot of turnovers, so this could be the potential week they can see the ball, after some fumbles or some interceptions, because the Raiders offense, ball security wise, hasn't been great as of late so far. So we're looking to see the Colts defense make some noise, truly. So this should be interesting to see what Lou Anarumo scheme wise brings up against the Raiders, with Geno Smith at helm at quarterback, those guys like that. It's going to be interesting to see. They got Jacoby Myers out there. Trey Tucker was a guy we talked on the podcast. We had him on a podcast last year. It should be interesting to see how he plays this week as well. It would have been nice to see Alec Pierce out there, but with the whole concussion protocol situation, he did not clear concussion protocol, so he's not going to be available this week. Michael Pittman Jr. is going to look like he's going to be playing. He practiced this week, so that was good. He was 50-50. But just go through the full injury report for the Colts. I'm going to go down the list for you guys. So for this practice, they got 3 players out this week. Tyler Goodson is not going to be playing this week. We got Kenny Moore is going to be out, of course, with the Achilles. Michael Pittman Jr. looked like he's going to be late. Daniel Scott's going to be out as well. But Brayton Smith looked like he's good to go. Grover Stewart looked like he's going to be good to go. Travarius Ward looked like he's going to be good to go. DeForest Buckner, he doesn't really practice. Looked like he's going to be available. Samson Ebukam looked like he's going to be available. Zaire Franklin with that injury scare with the ankle, he looked like he's going to be good to go, so that's good. Tyquan Lewis is still questionable, so we're probably going to hear about him on Saturday, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be playing. Like I said, Alec Pierce is going to be out, and Alec Pierce is definitely needed, especially after the situation when it came down to A.D. Mitchell with the whole fumble situation at the red zone. They're going to try to make some disciplinary actions with him going into this week. So it's going to be interesting to see how they manage him. I know they're probably going to have him on a snap count if anything. So you might see some Ashton dual reps, more dual reps this week, if anything. But I'm pretty sure we're going to need A.D. Mitchell this week. He still has talent, just made a bonehead decision. So it's going to be, I don't know what they're going to do this week. They did try to ask Coach Shane Steichen on the A.D. Mitchell rep situation going into this week. I know they have some type of disciplinary action of players doing things like that, especially like with Jonathan Taylor last year. So we're going to see what they're going to do with A.D. Mitchell going into this week. But like I said, being down a wide receiver like Alec Pierce and, A.D. Mitchell having that situation is a no-go. It's going to be needed. We're going to need all the talent we have going into this week because you can't really sleep on any team in the NFL, especially after coming off of a loss. You're going to try to go to lock in. You got to lock in this week and try to bounce back to get this dub. So I don't know what they're going to do offensive-wise on the offensive side with A.D. Mitchell and everything like that. I would love to see Jonathan Taylor be unleashed this week. We're definitely going to have to rely on him just due to being just be down the wide receiver and Alec Pierce, who is huge for this offense. If you didn't know how important Alec Pierce was, I think last week was a huge example of why he is needed out there on the field. Hopefully he comes back next week. We're going to miss him this weekend for sure against the Raiders, but the Colts are going to have to figure out something quick and get the ball out. Maybe they can rely on the rookie Tyler Warren. Seeing him in the end zone definitely just warms my heart because that guy is just a dog. A handsome tight end right there, man. What a guy. What a guy in Tyler Warren. If he could get in the end zone this week, maybe he could be unleashed. It would have been nice to see him go up against Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a guy, tight end for the Raiders, who's been battling injury. Looked like he's going to be out this week. Their report didn't come out. It probably dropped later on tonight. But it looked like he might not be available. He hasn't practiced all week. So it's going to be interesting to see how that offense looks without Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a guy some Colts fans wanted in Indianapolis, but they wound up waiting a year and getting Tyler Warren, which is a huge boost to this offense because he has been nothing but great for this offense. It's unleashed it. He has unleashed this offense, and this is something the Colts needed. The Colts needed a tight end like Tyler Warren, so he's been nothing but good for this team and this offense so far. I would love to see what he's going to do this week. Just being due to not having Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell might get his reps snapped or limited, I would say. So Josh Downs looks like he's probably going to have a big week. I'm pretty sure they're going to try to use him. He's been limited in the offense as of late, so they might unleash him, if anything. But going over to this defense, the Colts offense they're going to have to do something. Like I said, we just talked about A.D. Mitchell and his situation. But going into this week, Daniel Jones, I don't know if he's going to start seeing ghosts or things of that nature. He did throw 2 interceptions last week. The 2 interceptions was, there was toss-ups. I would say the last one didn't really matter. He just tried to get the ball down the field at the end of the game. But the go route, I didn't hate it at the beginning of the game last week against the Rams. Just sending A.D. Mitchell down there and just trying to get the ball out. It was at the beginning of the game. It was underthrown. His arm strength is not Anthony Richardson, but he could get the ball down the field, maybe a 40-yard bomb. We've seen him lob the ball down the field, and people just made crazy passes. Unfortunately, it was Alec Pierce that was making those grabs. But it would be interesting to see how Daniel Jones bounced back after last week's loss. Like I said, the Rams is no slouch. Of course, they just lost last night to the 49ers. Short week. But the Rams is still one of the best teams in the NFL. So it was a good matchup. It just unfortunately didn't go our way. But Daniel Jones is still having a good year. It's still too early to count him out. Like I said, it was going to be tested eventually this year, regardless of the situation. He wasn't going to go undefeated. He wasn't going to be like darn near perfect all year, QBR rating wise and things like that. If you just read stats, he wasn't going to be perfect, but he still had a good game, regardless of the situation against last week against the Rams. He still had a good week. It's going to be interesting. We'll see how he bounces back going up against this team and this defensive line and Max Crosby. Max Crosby is nothing but a dog. He's been stellar. I know a lot of fans, some Colts fans, wanted Max Crosby in Indianapolis. I mean, that's just one of the names you can mention. The Colts fans, they want everybody. It's just due to being a small market. Of course, a lot of people aren't going to go here. But Max Crosby was one of those names that Colts fans was like, hey, can we get him in Indianapolis on the edge? Because he would have been nice being paired up with Latu. It would have been great. But the Colts are going to be seeing him this week. So it's going to be interesting. That defense is led by Patrick Graham. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of scheme that they're going to draw up to try to get the Colts offense off edge. Like I said, if you had to ask me about this Raiders team, the defense would be the first thing that pop up in my mind because most of their success would be on the defensive side more than the offense. So it's going to be interesting to see how this Raiders defense goes up against this Colts team. The thing that they lack the most was probably the linebackers and the run defense. So, like I said, Jonathan Taylor looked like he's probably going to have a big week. If anything, they have to rely on that. They got to attack the weak spots, and the weak spots is the linebacker groups and the run defense. So it's going to be interesting to see what Shane Steichen and that offense can draw up to, get some type of explosive plays out of this offense. If they had to do anything, run the ball would be the motto this week, especially with the whole A.D. Mitchell and not having Alec Pierce situation. Jonathan Taylor should have a good run, and he's been dogging all year. He's been dogging all year. So unleashing Jonathan Taylor this week should be on the to-do list, on the top of the list. Just unleashing Jonathan Taylor, running all the way up and down the field against this Raiders defense. Like I said, I'm sure Max Crosby is going to have some type of pressure this week against the offense. Bernard Ryman's been having a rough year, in my opinion, with all the penalties and holdings and the situation. He just got paid a lot of money, but this has not been one of his good years, in my opinion. So hopefully he can lock in. It's still early though. Like it's still early, so you can never count these guys out. It's only week 5. It's only week 5, so you can still adjust and get better in time. I would say so. It's still too early to count him out, but I would say he's been having a rough year and of some rough reps, in my opinion. So hopefully he can lock in eventually. We just gave him a lot of money, so he's going to have to step up. So with the defense for the Raiders, they do a lot of mix of zone and man defense. But Daniel Jones has been pretty good at disguising or realizing what the defense is doing. Like I said, his game management has been on par. He's been really good at that, and that's something the Colts hasn't had in a while. A guy just reading the defense and discovering what they're doing, and he's beginning to ball out quick. That's another good thing with these teams. They have good defensive lines, and this is why I kind of like the schedule I have it set up because we've really been good. We've been hit hard early with the pressures and the blitzes and the good defensive line so far. Just look at the teams that he matched up against. A lot of good defensive linesmen. He's been playing so early, so he's going to be nothing but comfortable. And this team that he's been playing on with this Colts team, it's been good for him. Like it's been a good balance of both for this team and for Daniel Jones. So this is why Daniel Jones had a good success rate so far. Is because it goes hand in hand. So I've been loving Daniel Jones football so far. Indiana Jones, what you might call it. So I'm interested to see how he's going to play against this team, especially with the way that they disguise things on that side of the ball. But like I said, if he attacks the middle, that'll be his go-to thing of playing football. So I'm looking for Josh Downs to have a good week. Josh Downs has to be unleashed because the middle of the field should be open. But like I said, the offensive line just got to hold up. But they've been having a good year as well, pass protection-wise. They've been having a good year. So besides Bernard Ryman, who's my only thing of fear, I would say, Tanner Bortolini Xavien should be back this week. So that should be a huge boost. Him coming off an injury, he should probably, the middle of the offensive line should be 50-50. But I think it'll be okay. Just the offensive line being healthy, having him back, Gonsalves back is a huge boost. So it's going to be interesting to see how they pair up against that. The secondary isn't the best for the Raiders, but their weak spots, like I already mentioned, is the linebackers and the run defense. So it should be interesting to see how the Colts manage to adjust after the loss of the Rams, and can they bounce back? At first we had the division in wraps, but the Jaguars has hit their stride, and they're now in the same record as the Colts. So it's as usual, Is the Jaguars going to be the kryptonite for the Colts this year? We haven't played them yet, so it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And they got one of the best tacklers in football this year. Enough of Jaguars talk. But it's going to be interesting to see how this Colts team plays against the Raiders. Like I said, they got to bounce back this week. Um, I'm sure it's a lot on the plate with limited on the injuries, with no Kenny Moore still. Mike Hilton, I'm looking for him to have a good game. He's been pretty solid so far since joining the team, replacing Kenny Moore. But my go-to guys and standouts is going to be Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, and for the defensive side, I'm looking for Leonard to have a good week. He had a good week last week, but I think he's going to really hit home this week, especially back at home. He had a good game on the road, but back in Lucas Oil, that crowd's going to be rocking. I think Latu is going to have himself a really good week. And we're probably going to get us a Cam Bynum celebration, which we love dearly. He's been pretty quiet after last week, but I'm pretty sure he's going to bounce back this week as well. So my go-to guys, you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section or who's going to stand out this week in the Colts and Raiders game for the Colts side. I got Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, and then for defense, I got Latu and Cam Bynum. So that's my prediction. I got the Colts winning this game, bouncing back into victory. I think Genty's going to have him put a solid game just due to the workload. I think they're going to rely on him a lot, but it's going to come back to bite them. But if the Colts can just play their game and control the tempo, it should be easy. It should be easy. It's not a walk in the park, but I think the Colts can pretty much probably be very explosive and probably be too much for the Raiders. I don't think it'll be the week for them. But you guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I think it should be a good game. It's going to be early. The Raiders got a long travel, so that might have something to do with them coming from the West Coast. Heading over, and it's an early game too, so I don't know. Hopefully they'll be jet lagged. So it should be an interesting game. You guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section, your predictions and things of that nature. Follow us on all platforms. We'll be back after the game next week, most likely on Tuesday. So tune in. I'll be out here. I'll be here with my guys. But that's all I got for you guys. This is Marcus. Until then, have a safe weekend. Stay safe, travel-wise as well, and drink responsibly if you are. And I will check you guys next time.